Welcome back to Mundane Conversation. I'm your host, the 2019 release of Yandi, and today we have a special musical guest, Arvid, who recently put out the new album, Goodnightdaydream. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you? How's your life going?
Not too bad. I'm glad you brought up Yandi, though. I don't think it's coming out.
Not at all?
Well, I mean, not in 2018, at least. I mean, it might not come out at all at this rate.
Kanye keeps us on our toes.
I don't know how that man's brain works anymore, but yeah.
So I guess for anybody that doesn't know, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name's Luke. I make music under the name Arvid. It's like a band, except I'm the only person in it. And I released an album. My second album is Arvid in August. It was called Goodnightdaydream.
You got a pretty good reception on Reddit.
Yeah, I did. It was like pretty shocking to yeah.
Sorry, my cat's yelling in the background. He's just screaming.
It's okay. I was wondering what that was.
Oh my god.
What's your cat's name?
His name is Jasper.
Jasper? Yeah. No, he's definitely I used to have a cat. I used to hear him do that kind of thing sometimes.
Oh my god. I don't know what he's on about. Do you have any pets at all now?
Yeah, I have one dog. Her name's Bean.
Bean? I have a cat that we call Beans.
Oh, really?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's such a precious name.
Yeah, she's a good dog. She's fucking weird, but she's a good dog.
They really do be like that sometimes.
Yeah, they really do be like that.
Yeah, so that Reddit thread, you got pretty good reception. Everybody seemed pretty keen on the album right away. Did you have...
It was pretty shocking to see how many people were so warm to the album because, I mean, you know, it's not. I didn't think that it was going to be the kind of thing that a lot of people on Reddit were going to enjoy, and most 90% of people, 99% of people, were fucking fantastic and super kind and supportive. There were some people there who were like, this seems there was a couple dudes in particular who commented saying stuff like, this seems kind of fishy to me. And I was like, yeah, and I was like, why? And they were like, I don't know. That's a whole lot of upvotes, guy. And I was
really?
like, what? And I was like, well, you know, I was like, yeah, it's surprising to me too. And they were like, you sure you didn't buy these upvotes?
Oh my god.
And I was like, I'm broke. I don't know what you think I'm gonna do. I'm as surprised as anybody else that it ended up being at the top of the music board or whatever. But yeah, and I took it as a compliment as best as I could.
Yeah, those people are way too suspicious, especially of I don't know, anything that gets bought or if they feel like they're being advertised at. It's
right. Yes.
I don't get it.
I don't know. I just let them do, you know, whatever they're doing. I tried not to take it too personally anyway.
But I'm surprised that kind of thing blew up too, because it's hard to get people to just check out something new that they haven't heard before, especially from a guy that they haven't heard before.
Yeah, I've tried plenty. I mean, it's a struggle. That's the hardest part about being a musician, is getting anybody to care, to just stop and care. There's so much music out there in the world. I don't blame people for not caring necessarily. So, you know, that night when I released the record, I was kind of, I was thinking about the record prior, which I had released in 2014. It was called Old Factory Living. And I was like, well, I hope this record gets anywhere as near as, the amount of attention that I got back then. And I just...
How was that first one?
It did well. I also posted that to Reddit and it did pretty well. It didn't blow up necessarily as much as this one did, but for me back then, I was it blew my mind and it was very exciting. But yeah, this time I remember throwing it up on Reddit at 2 a.m. and just, having a beer and sitting out on my deck because, the album was finally done, and it was kind of it was a weird feeling. It was it was satisfying, but it was also kind of, an empty feeling because now all of a sudden I'm done with this project that I'd had for 2 years. Yeah. And Yeah, and I just remember like watching the number climb up a little bit and then going to bed for like 2 hours and waking up and just seeing like, oh my god, this thing had blown up. And I was just like getting all these messages and shit, and it was not what I was prepared for at all. Like I was kind of out of commission for like a full 24 hours, just like in my bed. Like I just like couldn't handle like the amount of attention I suddenly was receiving, and it was just not what I expected.
And you even got like what was it, number 4 bestseller on indie under Bandcamp?
I think it was like number 4, number 5 or something like that. Or it was like number 4, number 5 across the site, and it was number 1 for the indie thing, I think. I don't quite recall.
But yeah, that's great.
Definitely. Yeah, thank you. It was pretty crazy. Especially like seeing that I was like outdoing these artists that I listened to, and I was like, holy shit, I'm up here with them for a little bit at least.
Yeah, do you get, or how do you, one thing I was wondering is how do you like distribute all your music? Do you go through like a site like Distrokid or something, or do you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Actually, I use Distrokid. It's a great service for independent musicians. I mean, it gives you a lot of power. I think it's a very fair service between Bandcamp and Distrokid. I mean, if anybody else is an indie musician, I really think that that's the smartest way to invest your money, and the, you know, the most fair thing to you as an independent artist.
How soon after like a album sells do you actually get the money deposited to you?
Depend. I mean, if it's Bandcamp, it's pretty much immediate because it's very, it's a very connected sort of thing. Somebody just is paying you directly. If it's like Spotify royalties, because when I do DistroKid, I don't really put my albums on iTunes and stuff anymore because I can't price it the way I want to, like, so if I sell on Bandcamp, I can say you can pay whatever you want, which is the way I like to personally model it.
Yeah.
I just enjoy doing it that way. I think it's more genuine, and I can't do that on iTunes, obviously, but for like streaming royalties, you see that music after about 3 months after it happens. That's how long it usually takes Spotify and Google Play and Apple Music to process that money and everything.
Okay, so that's the service rather than the distribute like DistroKid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one thing as well that was going on in that thread where people were talking about like the Apple Music thing.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, where some people said like you should put it up anyways. Because I mean, even if people would pay more, I think that if people are okay with it, it's another audience to reach out to.
It is, yeah, and it's something I took into consideration for sure, like putting it on iTunes. But I don't really know how. Like I used to use iTunes. I don't anymore. I don't really know how closely linked it is to Apple Music, but I pretty much just said whatever about it. I just didn't really feel like putting it on iTunes. Maybe at some point, or maybe it's something I should have done in hindsight, but I don't know.
Because what does it automatically price it as? Like,
I think it's $10, and then I think it's like 70-30 split. The artist gets 70, and Apple Music keeps 30, I believe. Yeah. I've only ever made one iTunes sale, and it was my friend's dad. So, shout out to him. That was very kind of him.
Is Old Factory Living, on Apple Music?
Yeah, that one should be on just about everything, and that one's on iTunes too. Yeah, that one's out there. Definitely didn't get quite the popularity that this one amassed, but
yeah,
gets some listens here and there.
What year did Old Factory Living come out? That was like 2015, was it, or 14?
No, it's 2014. Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about the album now, like, after so many years?
That's something it's like something I struggle with. Like, for example, before I released Old Factory Living, I released an album, which I don't really even call it an album. I kind of look at it as an EP. It was called One Foot in the Gravy, and it was under a moniker called Fuzz Daniels. And I released that in 2013. October 2013, And when I look back at that record, and sometimes I'll like, late at night, I'll be like, I want to listen to what I was doing, on the very first album I ever put together. And I'll listen to it, and I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, what was I doing? Like, it's like, it's bad. And I mean, there's some moments on there where I'm proud, and I kind of feel the same way to an extent about Old Factory Living. Like, I'll listen, like, there's some songs on there where I'm like, yeah, I think I did the right thing. I think I made a good song. And then there's some songs and moments where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if this was it, Chief, at all. But, like, I try to be proud, and I try to recognize that I was younger back then. But I'm also a very, very self-critical person and a perfectionist, and I, have a hard, have a hard time with it sometimes.
And that's just like the process of like maturing as an artist.
Yeah, exactly. That is the process.
And that if you're doing it right, I feel like you should almost like outgrow yourself with every new project that you come across.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that I'll look back at Goodnight Daydream a little differently. I think that there are much fewer moments where I'm, embarrassed or whatever, or I'm, not feeling it. Like, I think that it was a much more deliberate process on this record, and I spent a lot more time on it and tried to cut down those moments as much as I could, because I really wanted it to be a good record, like, from start to finish, at least in my eyes.
And to talk more about Goodnight Daydream, like, it's a super solid record. I think even compared to like the other big name releases that have come out this year, like, I've been coming back to it more and more since August, because I think this album as well is one that definitely grows on you, and I think that there's just more and more details, like lyrically and like instrumentally. It's very like layered. And
well, thank you, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, for sure, it's great. What are the kind of themes and the main ideas for this album that you wanted to come across?
Well, I don't know how much I'm like, and how much depth I'm gonna get into it, just because I'm it's hard for me to like talk about what the songs are about and everything like that. But I will try to cover it as much as I feel comfortable with.
Yeah, because you're the artist, and however much you want to convey is like perfectly up to you. Like, if you want to be very intentionally vague, then that's fine. Because I think to a certain extent we shouldn't know everything.
Yeah, I kind of feel this
is part of the fun.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like on one hand, I like to give people a little insight as to what was going on for me. On the other hand, I definitely think that some of my favorite records, with some of the deepest themes and everything, and that had a lot going on in their narrative, you don't really hear much from the artist, and it was kind of left to the audience to decide, which I think is neat. But yeah, what I will say is that this record was a really feeling-driven record, and that was something that I kind of picked up from listening to a lot of the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson's process and his approach to production and songwriting and really feeling-based stuff, which when I started getting into Pet Sounds, I don't know how familiar you are with Pet Sounds, but it's like my favorite record of all time. And like during this whole process of making this album was when I really started to dive into that and give that a lot of thought. And my favorite thing about it is that it's very feeling based. It doesn't necessarily feel like, each song is telling a story as much as it is that each song is evoking a single feeling, and that sort of feeling is thematically what brings the whole record together, in my opinion. And Goodnight Daydream is very much a record about interpersonal relationships and people, and observing people in your life, and growth.
Yeah,
those are things that I think about, or that I was thinking about when I was making the record.
As well, I always wonder about like title tracks.
Yeah,
because title tracks are always, I feel like, a special part of any record, because it's sort of like, no matter what it sounds like there is like a certain focus on it, considering it carries the title
Right.
of the album, and almost that like this song could perhaps embody the ideas of the album as a whole. Do you feel like that is the case with Goodnight Daydream?
I don't know. I mean, it definitely did end up being kind of the lead single of the album and like the most popular song on the album and everything. And it was a song that very early on in the process of making the album, I was working on that song, and it took a lot of different forms, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it or what I was going to call it. And then at some point, I was like, hey, you know what? I could call this the name of the album for whatever reason. It just felt kind of right. I don't know if I would say that it captures the entire essence of the rest of the record, but I certainly feel like it's a necessary component of the record for me. Yeah, I think that's about as far as that goes.
Yeah, like it's a good taster for the album. I think when I first listened to it, I think I listened to that one first.
Yeah.
And like just like sonically as well, it kind of it really gives you a taste of what the rest of the album is going to be like.
Right.
And as well, like it's just catchy, and I love the lyrics on that one. Personally, it is my favorite off the record as well.
Sweet, yeah, thank you.
What was the last song that you worked on? Like, what was the last final finished song that went on the record?
Oh shit, that's a good question, because it's a blur looking back. Like that last month, like between, I think it was 3 weeks between when I announced the record, like officially I gave a date, I said August 3rd, and that was in July, and I was just working for like 12 hours a day for like 3 weeks, just hammering away at the record because it wasn't quite done yet. There was a lot that needed to be done.
Was the final tracklet, like, were all the songs like quote completed, like you just had to workshop it from there?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I had an idea of what the track list was going to be. Like right when I announced it, I remember I put up the back art that had the complete track list, which took a while for me to kind of fall into place. But when it did, I knew that it was right. And I had a lot of work to do. I can't really remember. It might have been the very last song on the record, Water Part 2. I think it probably was the last song that I really had to work on, because there were a lot of parts on that song that were done, but it was a matter of kind of bringing them all together. There were like 3, because that song is like 3 different songs at least, kind of, and I had to like stitch them together in a way that felt genuine and wasn't too contrived. And that song took a lot of work. I think that was probably it.
Another thing that I was wondering about, and like I said, you can be as vague as you want with this, but I was curious about, especially in the second half of the album, there becomes like a lyrical theme of like water. What does water mean to you, like as a symbol, and how does it fit into the record?
Yeah, it's like, it definitely was a very deliberate thing to talk about water so much, and like animals and stuff like that. Like animals and water are like 2 of the biggest lyrical kind of motifs, I guess you could say. And I don't know how, I don't want to get like too into it, but I think a lot of it had to do with I don't know, how water is like a necessary thing for life, and that kind of goes into like the food of the gods thing as well. Just sort of necessity and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of like this life-sustaining substance. Because there is a sort of like weird, I guess you can almost look at it as like this mystic object, because it's so like everyday, but the fact that everybody just like absolutely needs water makes it sort of like special, I guess. Yeah,
and it's part of us, it's part of everybody. I mean, we're all largely made up of water, that kind of thing.
Cool. Just because I thought that was kind of like a unique idea.
Yeah.
Like in general, I felt like the things talked about aren't like on this album didn't feel like super cliche or anything. So I liked the sort of like change of pace.
Yeah, no artist wants to be cliche, so I'm glad to hear that.
What things do you do with your music to help kind of like differentiate yourself in this super oversaturated industry?
I try not to think about that too much. I mean, it's hard not to sometimes. Like some of the hardest hitting criticism I've ever heard was when I released Old Factory Living, and I mean, I've heard some. You know, when you're putting yourself out there, you'll hear some shit. You know, people there are going to be some people who just hate you and who have very negative things to say about you, and that's okay. And you need to accept that if you're trying to put yourself out there. You just got to be okay with that. But the hardest hitting criticism I've ever heard was, well, at least some of it was, what did the guy say? He said something like, "Yeah, this is good, but it's not unlike like everything I've ever heard before. Like I've heard at least 100 other musicians, indie musicians, who are making stuff exactly like this, and this doesn't sound different." And that kind of hurt. Like, I mean, obviously, he got in my head a little bit because I can still remember that he said that, and that sucks. But at the same time, I was like, you know, fuck it, because you're still an individual. I'm still an individual. I'm still making something that's never been made before, and I just gotta, you know, try as hard as I can to make something that's coming from the heart. That's so much more important than making something that's just unique for the sake of being unique. And you know, if people hear my record and they say that it's this unique record, then that makes me happy, and I mean, it's a good thing. But it was much more important to me that it just came from the heart and that it was genuine, because the last thing I would want to do is, you know, try really hard to appease people like that guy who was giving me shit for sounding too much like other musicians. Like, you know, try to appease that guy by making something that's like totally off the wall.
Because now he's like sort of winning. He's got in your head too much.
Yeah, and also it just, you know, to me it just wouldn't be genuine to do that. Like, it's the most, like, I think that good music comes from being as genuine as you possibly can. Writing something even if you're feeling like, oh, does this sound like a song that's already been made before? Which, if you're a musician, that's a thought you're going to have a lot when you're writing. You know, am I ripping this guy off unintentionally or subconsciously? Or, you know, you just got to not care about that. And that's how I try to approach it most of the time.
As well, the cover art. I really like the cover art.
Oh, thank you very much.
I don't know. I like the whole glitch aesthetic, and it visually, I feel like it very much like looks like how it sounds.
Oh,
like
yeah.
The whole album's coated in this like super like dreamy, orangey feeling.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so.
So, like, you did the album art yourself, right?
I did, yeah.
That's what I understood?
Yeah,
Very
I
nice.
did. It was an old painting that I found, and I spent a lot of time. You know, the artwork on the album was super important to me. I mean, that's always super important to me. I think of my favorite records, and, you know, for the most part, those album covers feel like the album, and they end up being the sole visual element you have to attach this music to in a very abstract way. So the album artwork to me is very important. And, you know, when I was messing around trying to figure it out, I must have come up with like 10 different mocks of what the album art could have been. And when I settled on that, it just felt very right. And it was something that I was keeping in mind throughout the process of making the album. I was kind of looking back at that picture and almost kind of looking at that for guidance sometimes. Just remembering that that's what this album looks like. And
how early on did you have it done in the process?
Probably like pretty relatively early on. Like, I was probably halfway done with the album when I was really set on that album art. That's what I would probably say. A year.
I think in general, like, the album art plays a huge part in like in how people perceive it, obviously. But like, for me, a big reason why I would even listen to a particular album is just like how it looks. Like, some of my favorite albums I discovered because of I just like the album art, and that made me want to keep coming back to it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean for sure. There are some albums where I saw the album art and I was just like floored with curiosity, and I was like, I really need to hear what this sounds like.
The main case for me is the album Congratulations by MGMT.
Oh yeah, that album.
I love that album art.
Yeah, Yeah, I like MGMT.
God bless. They're my favorite band, top band
Really?
for me.
Yeah, I listened to Oracular Spectacular a lot in high school because that was the shit in high school when that record came out. And a lot of people actually hear MGMT influence on my music, and I would tell them that they're not wrong. It's definitely there. It's not super, super prominent, but it's definitely there.
So would you say that like Oracular Spectacular influenced you the most because of its like prominence in high school, or
Of MGMT's work? Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, for sure. That's my favorite MGMT album, personally.
Did you hear Little Dark Age in February?
Yeah, dude. Great record. I liked it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. I gotta listen to that more, but yeah, I listened to it when it came out, and I was very satisfied with it. Really sounded like they grew for the better, and
For sure. So then, I guess this segues pretty well into our one question that we received.
oh, you received one?
Yeah, I got two questions here.
Oh, damn, that's awesome.
So someone wants to know about, and you talked about this before already, but just like what are some of your like sonic inspirations for Goodnight Daydream? Like you mentioned, the Beach Boys.
Yeah, the Beach Boys definitely are number one. Brian Wilson is, I literally have like little notes of quotes that Brian Wilson has said like on my wall that I would look at these while I was writing, and it would like it would put me back on track. And if I ever felt like I was in a hole when I was kind of like an inspirational hole, like I couldn't wasn't sure what to do next, I would just kind of stop what I'm doing and like go outside and just listen to Pet Sounds from front to back. And I feel like every time I did that, I would feel like, okay, I know what the next step is. It would just, it helped me a lot. That record helped me a lot. But yeah, besides the Beach Boys, I would definitely say the work of the Elephant Six Collective helped me a ton as well, inspired me a ton. And that's bands like Neutral Milk Hotel and the Olivia Tremor Control and the Apples in Stereo.
I was gonna say Neutral Milk Hotel.
Yeah, I
just
love.
based on listening.
Yeah, In the Airplane Over the Sea is my PC wallpaper, and it's a very, very important album to me. And I think that really is because all those guys in the Elephant Six Collective, I mean, that entire collective is pretty much based on the music of Pet Sounds, and kind of taking, the groundwork that Pet Sounds laid down and incorporating that into in a new way, and that was their philosophy. And I'm like, well, that really aligns with my philosophy as well. So I guess it's only natural that they inspire me so much, and I love their music and their approach to production and songwriting.
And on your Bandcamp as well, like on the bottom, it also mentions Car Seat Headrest.
Oh yeah,
Fantasy.
yeah.
Like a poppier, dreamier sort of like twin fantasy thing is what I imagine. Like I don't know, like lyrically and like the very like feeling based sort of
Right.
feeling to the whole record made me think a lot about
Yeah, I mean, Will Toledo is a way better songwriter than I am. That dude, it almost seems like his brain is wired for songwriting. He's very talented at it. Twin Fantasy definitely. I don't know how much it inspired the sound, but it definitely inspired me as an artist, because that record really shows you how. I mean, I feel like, at least in my world, that record made Bandcamp music kind of a thing. Like, it showed people how serious of a platform Bandcamp can be. And yeah, it's such a good record. And Will's a great guy, and yeah.
Cool. And then the other question is, what about like a dream collaboration if you could work with any artist?
That's a good one. And that's a really hard one to answer, because I'm like such a non-collaborative person. I've been approached to collab with a number of people, and I'm very flattered, but at the same time, I really do work best completely alone. That's like how the whole Goodnight Daydream process happened. It was just totally isolated, for whatever reason. So it's hard to say. I guess it honestly would probably be Brian Wilson, because that man is a fucking genius. Like, just sitting behind the board with that guy, like hearing his thoughts about a mix would be like the number one greatest moment of my life. Just to be able to collaborate with that guy, and yeah, that would probably be number one. I'm trying to figure out which one of these questions came from my mom or some shit.
As far as I know, none of them, but
okay, that's good.
yeah. So music this year has been pretty exciting.
Yeah, dude, it's been a pretty good year.
What are your, so of all the 2018 releases, what are some of your shout outs then?
Pusha T's Daytona, that shit is so good. Have you listened to that record? Do you listen to much hip hop?
I dabble.
Yeah.
I've been looking at it, and I feel like every like week I'm like, this is it. I'll check it out, but then I never do.
Yeah, no. Shout out.
But I will at some point.
Yeah. Shout out Earl Sweatshirt. He's releasing a record on Friday. I'm super looking forward to. I really like Earl. Daughters came out with this album. You won't get what
Daughters.
Yeah, I've been listening to that a lot lately. It's really, really good. What else? I don't know. It's been really hip hop heavy for me, at least. There was a JPEG Mafia record I really liked too. He's a bit of an indie rapper from Baltimore, and I really liked his album. Can't really think of anything else.
The No Name album that came out, Room 25.
I've heard of that. I have not heard it. I'll keep that in mind though, because I need to listen to a lot more music that came out this year. I was just working so much on my own record; it was very hard to like let other music in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because you kind of want to. You already have a sound going, and I guess you might not want to like dilute it.
Yeah, but mostly just I was just so busy. Like it was hard to keep my brain like in a place where I was like able to listen to somebody else's music without just thinking about my own record and then going back and working. Yeah.
For me, like my listens this year have been a lot more like I guess indie pop oriented.
Yeah.
Like Little Dark Age, probably my album of the year.
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
I absolutely love that record.
Yeah.
Father John Misty, God's Favorite Customer.
I haven't listened to that yet. I really need to though. I like Father John Misty. I haven't really listened to like a whole record of his since I Love You Honey Bear, and which is kind of a shitty thing of me because I really like his songwriting. I just never got around to listening to God's Favorite Customer. I heard nothing but good things about it. And the record before that, I haven't
Pure
listened
Comedy,
to it.
yeah.
Yeah, Pure Comedy. I heard it was great, but I didn't
It really is.
give it a deep listen or anything.
That one's a huge, like, at first I liked it, and then I started to not like it, because, like, I thought it was kind of pretentious, but then I listened to it even more, and then I was like, okay, actually, this is pretty good.
Yeah, the pretentiousness of Father John Misty is definitely, like, that's, like, a huge, like, you gotta embrace it, because he's one pretentious dude, but
it's part of the character.
It's part of the
fun.
character, yeah.
Like, his songwriting and just, like, his delivery as well is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think Pure Comedy has some of like the best lyrics of at least any albums I've listened to.
Damn, yeah, I'm really gonna have to listen to that. And God's Favorite Customer.
Superorganism put out their first album this year.
Really? I don't know if I'm familiar, to be honest.
They got a good amount of attention, but then it faded off, and I don't know, some like people just kind of stopped caring. But it's like this super like sample heavy, like sort of like glitchy poppy underwater sound. In that sense, it kind of reminds me
of
Goodnight Daydream, where it kind of like has this big like watery sound to it almost that I enjoy.
That's cool. You said Superorganism?
Yeah,
I'm gonna definitely have to listen to that as well.
And it's a self-titled record. Death Grips, You're the Snitch.
Yeah, You're the Snitch was great.
That's one of the outliers from like my list. It's in like my top 5, but it seems like such a big sonic departure. Jack Stauber is another indie artist that's been like blowing up on YouTube recently. He puts out some great work.
I don't think I'm familiar with that guy either. Shit, I'm learning a lot today.
Parquet Courts, Wide Awake.
See, Parquet Courts is one of those bands that everybody, like, they're literally on, or at least for a time, like, and if you look on the Arvid Spotify, it would say fans also like Parquet Courts. And I was like, well, then I need to listen to them more, obviously. And I have been listening to them a little bit, and I have loved everything that I've heard. But it's one of those bands where I'm like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what records I should be listening to first. I've
only listened to Wide Awake personally, but I mean, like Total Football, Almost Had to Start a Fight, The Closer, Tenderness as well are all really good tracks.
Yeah, I'll have to listen to that, and I'm sure I will, as I listen to that band a little more.
And what did you think of, because I know you listen to Kanye West, what did you think of Yay that came out in June?
Yay was a bit of a disappointment, I'm not gonna lie, but that man has been disappointing me consistently for the past year at least.
Yeah.
In many, many ways. Still love him, still wish the best for him, but yeah, Yay was a little bit... Like, I think that he touched on some very, like, some of the most emotional stuff I've heard from him in his entire career, you know, and I give him a lot of credit for that. I mean, he was talking about, like, suicidal thoughts and shit, and it was very, like, it was a hard pill to swallow right when the album dropped, and, you know, but overall, it was a little unfinished, unbaked. But
yeah, because you heard about, like, because I'm sure you know about, like, how it got, like, scrapped and then remade.
Oh yeah.
Ever since the the awful album rollout, that whole TMZ situation.
Oh yeah, I know.
Which is wild.
Yeah, it was wild. You know, and I wish that dude the best, and I really hope he I really hope he puts out an album that really blows my pants off. But I don't know, like, you know, Ye
I mean,
was
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed
for Yandhi.
Fingers crossed for Yandhi. I really hope that it ends up being very, 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 very good. But at this point, I mean, I don't know. He's got to work on his stuff, I guess, and he's finding his way. Hopefully. Yeah. It was a little messy. Kids See Ghosts was... I thought that it was a little more interesting, but I still didn't really care too much for it. But, you know, he's doing what he's doing. I really liked... I mean, like I said, Daytona by Pusha T. That was one of those 4 albums that he produced alongside Nas's album, and then Yay, and then Kids See Ghosts. And I think Daytona was the best one. It's really good.
Yeah. That's the only one I haven't listened to.
Oh yeah,
so I really got to. Yeah,
you gotta give it a listen. I mean, it's like 20 minutes long. It's an easy listen, and it's a banger.
And back to album covers. What about, like, album covers purely visually, just on from what it looks like alone? Top covers of the year. Again, for me, Little Dark Age. I love that cover. Super weird, just super bright yellow. You don't see bright yellow a lot.
Of the year, for me, it would probably be Year of the Snitch, because when I looked at that art for the first time, I was like, holy shit, I'm terrified. What am I looking at? I was like,
just viscerally gross.
Viscerally disturbing. I think that's really cool. It's like some of my favorite album art from Death Grips. And
yeah, it's so cursed.
Yeah, definitely. And there hasn't been another album that and it gave me that feeling this year of wanting to hear what that is.
Yeah, like the addition of the hand in the corner holding on to whatever that is just adds so much extra.
Yeah, it was pretty out there, and
like, what is this?
I really like that album art for sure.
The Daughters album art I really enjoy as well.
Oh yeah,
because it's just so, like, terrifying, and it really encapsulates the sound as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Super freaky.
Yeah, I really like that album artwork as well. I think you're right. I definitely think that it captures the sound and the themes of that record pretty well.
And like I said before, Goodnight Daydream, I really like that cover.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm glad people like that one. I was afraid it was going to come off a little amateurish, but I'm somebody who very much likes to do their own artwork, even though I'm really not much of a visual artist at all. But, you know, I like having that connection to it and having that control.
For sure. And I always like when, like, artists themselves do their own album covers, because I feel like it adds a bit more, like, sort of like genuineness, or makes it feel just more like it's part of the project.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, it's whatever looks and feels right. One day, if I have, like, money to really piss away, I'll find an artist I like and see if he can help me in that department. But for now, you know, if I can do it myself, I will do it. That's always been my philosophy with this shit. And I've done pretty much everything myself with my music up till this point.
Is there anything else that you just wanted to talk about or throw in, or anything about the album that you feel compelled to mention?
Not necessarily from, like, a creative standpoint, but what I do want to say is I want to give a shout out to my label Mystery Circles, who have released my record on cassette. And
Oh yeah, the physical release. I saw that.
yeah, there's a physical release. You can buy a copy on my Bandcamp page. They're $8, and it's a really cool tape. I'm really happy with how it came out, and my label's awesome, and they've helped a ton with physical stuff, the physical release and everything like that. And
Would you ever do vinyl if you could?
oh, 100%. Yeah, I would love to get Goodnight Daydream on vinyl, and hopefully that'll happen in the future. People have asked about it a lot. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get that done, but I would really like to get that done at some point at least.
Like a nice orange colored vinyl would be fantastic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even have a turntable, but that would be the thing that finally makes me get one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like vinyl, I don't have a vinyl player or a record player either, but just like I love the whole aesthetic of it, and like the sleeves, and I love when artists include like art books.
Oh yeah,
with their or like lyric books with different artworks to go along with it.
Yeah, that shit's neat. I like records. I mean, I have like a decent amount of records just that I've gotten from either like my parents' old records or like garage sales, like like just random stuff. Like I have like a what do I have? Like an Elton John record, a Stevie Wonder record, Blues Brothers record, and I just like having them. Yeah, like it's cool to be able to have the artwork like that, just like this, giant piece of artwork, and I appreciate the sentiment behind having analog music. And yeah, no, I need to get one at some point, and I would definitely like to have my album on vinyl. This shit would be cash.
I'm glad it's not a dead medium. We got to keep it alive. CDs, I never cared for CDs. I'm glad if we let those go, but vinyls are special.
I'm okay with CDs, but only because of the audiophile in me, who's like, CDs are the highest quality you could possibly have for music, at least right now. Like,
true.
Yeah, a little lossless stuff like that. But yeah, I have a bunch of CDs. I mean, that was just how I grew up.
The comeback of cassettes is interesting too. That
it is.
I don't know, because they're really not that convenient.
No, they're not.
So it's kind of weird. Like, it's just purely like aesthetic at this point, but they're still great. And I mean, I have a soft spot for that now too, just the way it looks, and they're just these cute little cases. I like that you also edit I like the edited artwork as well on the spine and stuff like that you did for the cassette.
Oh yeah,
these cute little things.
Yeah, shout out to my label for doing that, because I tried and I was just having a really hard time with it, and then David, the guy behind Mystery Circles, was like, "I'll just take care of it for you," and I was like, "Cool." And benefits of having a label, I guess. And yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. I like cassette as well. It's always been kind of part of the process, especially because Olfactory Living was recorded to cassette, actually. This record, Goodnight Daydream, was not. That wouldn't really be possible, but yeah, I've always had people asking for a cassette release of my last album, which hasn't happened yet, but to the people who wanted a cassette release of Goodnight Daydream, they can happily acquire one now. And
yeah, we got it.
I've listened to it. It sounds pretty good. It sounds like a cassette. It's yeah.
Do you think after you put out a project, how long do you wait before you start on the next thing? Is it just like whenever inspiration starts to hit?
Whenever inspiration starts to hit. I mean, this Goodnight Daydream took way too long. Like, I don't ever want to take a 4-year break ever again. So yeah, but it's kind of hard because you're sort of just waiting around for something to click in your head to where you feel that borderline manic desire to create.
Yeah.
And until that happens, it can be quite difficult, but I'm trying to get the ball rolling again and work on a new record, like, right now.
And there's always like just the annoying like push and pull between like inspiration and just like discipline, because you got to do something, but like sometimes you're just really not feeling it. And,
exactly.
And it's hard because you can't force yourself 100%.
No, you can't force yourself. I'm like very anti forcing yourself when it comes to art. I think that's how bad art happens. There are like some records where I'm just like, this is not good, and I feel like these guys were just forcing themselves to create something, and that's just bad.
Oh yeah, also, actually, this is one question I wanted to ask, because I saw on your SoundCloud, if you go way back, you find an earlier recording of the song, like, Old King Cole.
Yeah.
Is that the oldest song on the album, or do some of them pieces of it go back even further?
No, that is by far the oldest song on the record, definitely.
What made you want to put it on there?
I just liked the song, but mostly I feel like it fit in. I feel like it would make sense for that song to be at the end of the record. It was just a song that I was particularly proud of, and I wrote that like way early on when I thought the Goodnight Daydream was going to be an entirely different record, like a very different record, recorded to cassette and much more stripped down acoustic kind of stuff. And I remember I wrote Old King Cole in my attic, and it just came out very easily, and I was super happy with it. And I just said, I'm going to sit on this song for a while. If it comes back up, it will. And if it feels right, then I'll execute it. And that's what happened. And I redid the song, kind of reworked it a little bit, and it just felt right.
Well, I mean, this album has really got a lot of eyes on you now, and I know that I'll be looking out for anything else you put out.
Thanks a ton, man. I really appreciate it.
From here going forward. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a good album.
Thanks, dog.
Thank you for being on my podcast as well. Just this tiny thing.
Thank you for having me.
I do, for sure. It's always a blessing.
Yeah,
talk
I really
to new
appreciate
people, talk about new things.
Yeah.
Shout out to music.
Shout out to music.
Shout out to Kanye West. Shout out to staying on your medications.
Yeah, Godspeed.
Shout out to all the janitors out there.
Oh yeah. The janitors of the world.
Thank you again for being on my podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you.
And I hope you have a good day.
You too.